Morning. Y'all all of a sudden got quiet, so it reminded me it must be 6:30. I want to call this meeting to order of the town forum and ask that you bow your heads in a moment of silence. Amen. I want us to remember Martha Teeter, who was Ed Teeter's wife. Ed Teeter served as an auxiliary policeman here for us for I don't know how many years, but it was for a long, long time. And his wife went into hospice the other week, and then she passed away shortly after that. So just remember Martha Teeter in your prayers, please. Right agenda. Commissioners, y'all have seen the agenda for the town forum. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Have a motion from Commissioner Boucher. Do I have a second? Have a second from Commissioner Alexander. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda is adopted. The floor is open for public comment. Don't everybody rush up at one time. Yes, Martha.
I have Martha Campbell, 149 Maryland Place. I just have a question. When you get to the item on the agenda later about moving $40,000
It's
related.
going to be pulled,
Okay.
so
Well,
we won't get to it.
Okay. My question is then, do you know yet how much money has totally been spent?
I can tell you, I signed checks for over 50-something thousand week before last. That's
This
all
is-
I know right now.
This is related to the
Yeah.
town's personal, I mean, our taxpayers' expense
Yes,
for the Board of Adjustments work.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's $50,000. It's more than that, I know, isn't it, Angela? It's probably more like $80,000 or $90,000 by now or something close to that. But I do remember signing those checks because I went into shock and went and had to go talk to Angela first,
I'm
make
sure
sure
you
we
did.
had the money. And I know she wouldn't write checks if we didn't have the money. So for over $50,000 2 weeks ago.
That was this, that's not the first checks or the last, I'm
No,
sure.
that's a second, maybe third batch of checks that I've signed
Okay, thank you.
pertaining to that. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, we can get you a figure on that. Okay, yeah, it's a hunk. So, but we're not going to move the $40,000 to legal fees tonight. I'm going to pull that. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Good evening.
My name is Jim Gibbs, and I'm the president of Mill Creek Wildlife Club and the Mount Mitchell Bear Hunting Club.
Yes, sir.
And I believe we're all in agreement to the facts that were stated in the memorandum dated February 24th from Mr. Mason Blake, that there is a problem with armed hunters turning out packs of dogs and hunting within the residential areas of Montreat. This is a practice our club does not condone or participate in, and we will gladly work with Montreat and its citizens to see the practice stopped. As I mentioned at the last meeting, our club owns over 1,300 acres of land in neighboring McDowell County where we hunt, as well as hunting on the thousands of acres of game lands in the Pisgah National Forest. We really do not need to hunt in Montreat's residential neighborhoods. However, even though we turn our dogs out in another county, we have no control over where the bears and the dogs ultimately go. They do sometimes come into Montreat. And there needs to be a process in place for us to retrieve our dogs in an orderly manner without being fined or penalized. We will gladly work with the Montreat Police Department in the retrieval of our dogs when they cross into Montreat. I might recommend something along maybe a special use permit to our club, which allows us to catch our dogs when they come into the Montreat area. All of our club members carry membership cards identifying them as being members of the Mount Mitchell Bear Hunting Club. Anyone who does not have a current membership card does not represent our club or its interest. Also, may be issuing a decal for our vehicles identifying us as being permitted in Montreat to retrieve our dogs could also help alleviate some of this problem. The decal will identify our trucks to the citizens as well as the members of the police department. As I stated in the previous public hearing, we want to be good neighbors to Montreat and continue to allow all of the citizens of Montreat to use and enjoyment of our land along the old toll road for hiking and other recreational pursuits. Even now, I'm coordinating with Mr. Tanner Pickett back here, Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Communications at the Montreat Conference Center in preparation for the annual Seven Sisters 25K race, which will be held April the 16th. As Captain Melton with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission stated, with the bear population increasing by about 6% per year, state-regulated bear hunting is essential to controlling the bear population. I believe that without regulated bear hunting, Montreat, like Asheville, will see the dog problem ultimately turn into a bear problem. What I'm requesting is that there be a process developed which will allow us to continue to be good neighbors while supporting Montreat in correcting the current problem of armed outside hunters coming into Montreat and turning packs of dogs out and hunting within the residential neighborhoods. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And Montreat does not have a problem with you or your bear club. We've had nothing but accolades about the way y'all conduct yourselves and have for years. And we do appreciate your concern, and we will continue to work with you. Commissioner Blake's investigation into what can be done and so forth is in just the early stages of looking at and seeing what can be done. And he will, I'm sure, before we finalize anything, we will consult with you folks and talk about what we can do, whether it's special use or something like that. Mason, you want to say anything?
As other interested parties, including our residents, and I'll be making a motion during the meeting today that in fact we have a public hearing or workshop so that we make sure we get everyone's input. Be happy to meet with folks outside the meeting too, to gather ideas you may have. Our goal is not to punish you folks at all. It's to punish the people that are coming in and turning their dogs loose here. And so that's what we will aim at. And there's, I think, plenty of flexibility in the way the ordinances can be written to do that and accomplish that.
We know you will, and we do appreciate that. You have anything else, Mason?
No.
Okay. Any other commissioner have any?
Yes,
Yeah.
y'all slipped out. I appreciate y'all coming back again this month. And I certainly, I won't spend a lot of time, but in the 15 years and that I've been here and seen what the bear hunters have done, I think y'all been wonderful neighbors. I appreciate the fact that I can go up on the toll road and cross y'all's property often, and you open it up for races and for many events. So I appreciate, I think it's a two ways. Y'all are good neighbors, and hopefully, we will be good neighbors back. I did want to, and I won't directly put you on the spot here with it, but is there a way that as we work with the game warden, and I tend to say I'd like to stay away from ordinance if we can, because sometimes they're written to protect us, but they're not always used that way. But are there ways that, since it is 1,300 acres up there, your property, that y'all can do some or help us work in policing that and kind of keeping some of these other bear clubs out? Is that a harder task than it is to say?
we try to police our own people.
Right.
We have our club bylaws and rules, and when somebody we find violates club policy or they are kicked out. We don't have any way to penalize other than just kicking them out of the club. We, certainly don't condone people having guns or rifles in Montreat, chasing or letting packs of dogs loose on a dumpster when they see a bear there. All we really want is to, as quietly and as efficiently be able to come retrieve our dogs when they come into Montreat. Most times they're just passing through.
Right.
And you very rarely will see the dogs on a bear because the bears typically are run way far ahead of the dogs.
And you're to that point,
Unless they're in a tree, and then we can come get our dogs and put them in the truck and get out. But we definitely don't want to be in violation of the trespass ordinance if one is, enacted, because we don't want to violate private property rights of anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to get a permission from every homeowner in Montreat to cross their land and we just want to try to we'd rather be upfront and than having to ask for forgiveness later on.
sure. And I would say, again, in my 15 years, I've seen it, I think personally, where I've even heard the dogs, maybe not seen the dogs, maybe 3 to 4 times over 15 years. So I don't think it's a yearly event. I do know that here this year, I think it occurred twice, but again, that was kind of an anomaly, I
And
believe.
that was the very last week of the season.
Exactly.
For some reason, it surprised us as well
Right.
when it happened.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else on that subject? Anyone else wish to speak? If you don't, I'm going to adjourn it and we're going to let you talk amongst yourselves until 7 o'clock. So anybody has anything to say or would like to ask a question, we'd be happy to ask. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Whitmer to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Commissioner Fouché. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Talk amongst yourselves until 7 o'clock, and then we'll get cranked up.
Yes. Yet to do.
Well. That would be good.
So much for our healthy balance sheet.
I didn't realize. Getting close to being it, but it wasn't.
I'm hopeful that the opponents of price. It is very difficult. Very difficult to determine a decision like that. I wasn't here for the whole matter, but it's pretty tough.
Want to welcome everybody to our town council meeting of February the 10th. February the 10th, that's an old one. March the 10th. And hope everyone's doing well. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, for all. All bow our heads. Yeah. Before we start the meeting, commissioners, you had a chance to look at the agenda. And I want to ask for an adoption of the agenda, but we need to drop last item on the agenda, the
Yeah.
transfer of funds. The item F, consideration of budget amendment, just drop that one. Darlene says we're not ready to do that. So with that exception of dropping that item, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as adjusted?
So moved.
Have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Whitmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Otto. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes carry. Agenda is adopted. My communication is pretty much the same as last time. Just remember Martha Teeter in your prayers, long time, the wife of a longtime auxiliary policeman, Ed Teeter, who worked for us for years, did a wonderful job. And also, you folks that are parked on the road, it's going to snow. Please move your cars off the road. If we have to plow, it's difficult at best to get around your cars. And you can park in somebody else's driveway. You know who's here and who's not here. So pull off the road and get your cars off of the road, because if we have to plow, it just makes it that much easier and that much safer for our people. Under the consent agenda. What? Oh, the detour. Barry, we got a detour coming up, don't we? That's when? Monday? Monday morning.
We're going to close Assembly Drive at 8 o'clock Monday morning. The incoming traffic will be able to go up Virginia, turn right on Mississippi, and then back right on Louisiana, which will put you back on Assembly Drive. Exiting traffic will be able to go up Louisiana and then make a left onto Virginia. If they'll stay on Virginia all the way out, that'll be put you back on Assembly Drive for exiting.
Okay.
And we're going to try to have everything wrapped up about 4:30 every afternoon.
How many trees y'all taking out?
We're looking at about 30 to 35.
Okay, because I was trying to count as I drove the other day and I lost count with all the ribbons and stuff.
It was quite a few trees from the tree inventory that was done 2 years ago.
Right.
And this is all trees that were diseased or dying.
Okay.
And we've had quite a few ash trees that have died since then. So we're going to take the ash trees out. Right now, they're becoming very brittle, and you got limbs that just break off for no reason and stuff into the roadways or the paths where everybody's walking or riding their bikes.
Starting Monday morning, 8 o'clock.
Yes, sir. We're hoping
Okay.
so.
All right.
And I'll just comment, Mayor, that there are detour maps on the website and will be in the Montreat Minute tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Tom had reminded me of this earlier, and my wonderful memory these days, I've just totally forgot it. Consent agenda. You want to cover the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. The staff would request that the Commissioners consider adoption of the February 10th Town Council Forum minutes, public forum minutes, as well as the Town Council meeting minutes.
Okay. Do you have any administrators communication tonight?
No, sir, at this
Okay.
time. Thank you.
Hope everybody's met Ben Blackman. Ben's our interim town administrator, and we're just happy to have him. And he's doing a wonderful job, and he's very complimentary of the staff we have. So Ben, you keep up your work, and staff, y'all keep me believing that y'all are that good. Okay. Y'all have a reason. Commissioners, you've received administrative reports from the Administration Department, Finance, Planning and Zoning, Police, Public Works and Water, Sanitation and Streets. Any questions? I was asked a question earlier about how much we had spent on attorney fees on MRA's request to build a lodge, and right now we're at $74,000 in attorney fees. $74,000 in attorney fees is what we've spent thus far. No questions? Floor is open for public comment. Yes, Martha?
Thank you for getting the answer to my question that I asked earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
That doesn't count attorney fees that are being paid by the two parties who are actually
I have no idea.
involved. No, that's what I mean. This is a separate item from
This is
what,
just coming out of your pocket.
right.
You're going to cover all this, right?
You know, we're going to all have to, unfortunately. I'm here to talk a little bit about money and getting some money for the town. As you know, Buncombe County was allocated 50.7 million through the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. And RFQs were sent out to municipalities for the first round, which was 23.1 million that was awarded to 27 projects within the county. Now there's a round two, and it's been advertised. I know that at least one person sent it to Angie, so you all may have already seen this. 27.6 million is available, including funds this time to nonprofits and public organizations. The county commission has selected 10 categories for this round of proposals, and they are affordable housing, aging and older adults, business support and economic development, environment and climate, homelessness, K-12 education, infrastructure and or broadband, mental health and substance abuse, North Carolina pre-K expansion and workforce development. The deadlines for the proposals is April 12th at noon. But next Monday, March 14th, from 1:30 to 3, there's a virtually held funding workshop that the county is going to hold. And that'll help those who want to learn more about this to understand what kinds of projects the county is looking for and how best to write the proposal to be successful with the application. I've got the website is buncombecounty.org/recovery funding. I encourage the town and the council to be represented at the virtual funding workshop and discover what kinds of projects might be presented for grants from these funds. It's part of how our tax money was sent to us as in the coronavirus funding that was passed by Congress much earlier. So this is our money that's filtering back now through the county. And I hope if you listen and you find and you think of other entities within the county, within the town that might also benefit from the grants, feel free to pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. And you have that address and everything? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Floor is open. Seeing no one jump up and run, we have no old business to discuss tonight, so we'll go right to new business. And item A under new business is discussion of Flat Creek Crossing accessibility trail. And who's going to make the presentation? Okay.
I appreciate this time, and if I can be heard, is this on?
Thank
you. I would like to first say thank you to the council and in particular Ben Blackburn, who has placed Patty and myself on the agenda. It was one of the first official businesses, I'm sure he did, because he was visiting with me in the hallway, and I appreciate your letting us get going because we are on a roll. The Montreat, our goal tonight is to have the Montreat Town Council to consent to proceed on a new Montreat land care project with the creation of an accessible trail. A packet was sent out, and there are those who are here who would like to have one. I've asked Martha Campbell to it's a 3-page with pictures. The Montreat land care, just a little summary of what we are. I know that there are people at home listening on Zoom, and I'm hoping that maybe people in the public here will know that with the help from the Land of the Sky Regional Council, the Montreat Land Care was formed in January of 2007. 15 years. It's our birthday this year in January. The Montreat Land Care is an advisory committee to the Board of Commissioners. Financial matters, including fundraising, grant applications, and other income and expenditures will be approved and conducted by the Montreat Land Care through the Administrative Office of the Town of Montreat. Alice Lynch recently has given the council the revised, and you voted on the bylaws. And in that, we have a mission to organize and support projects that protect, preserve, and present the natural features of the Montreat Code. So the members of our Land Care Committee are appointed by the membership of the following entities. The town, you have 4 members, including a town commissioner, a National Wildlife Federation designate designer, and 2 citizens from the community at large. And our town administrator shall serve as an ex officio member. Montreat College has 2 professors. Montreat Conference Center has 3 members with the Montreat Wilderness, the Hiking Club, and the 3rd is at large, or it's been Tracy Bailey for many, many years. And she has done a lot of the conference trails with the Rhodes Scholars. Cottagers Wilderness and Open Space Committee has 1 member, and the Montreat Presbyterian Church PC USA is the Earth Ministry team. Our land care teams, this is where the most activity is done and the excitement of this type of committee. As you remember, 15 years ago, there was a Parks and Recreation Committee. This is the area that we get a lot of activities. And I know that the Montreat Conference Center supports all those playgrounds and Lake Susan, et cetera. That's where the town recreation is in the Conference Center properties, a majority. But there's something new coming on, and we're going to give you an opportunity, town, to be part of a recreational area in Montreat. Land care teams are grassroots ownership of challenges and solutions, taking personal responsibility, taking action to preserve and to restore our natural assets here. The teams or individuals identify their own problems. They come to me, they come to the meetings, and they craft their own solutions and make proposals to the Montreat Land Care Committee. Enter Patty Powell. Well, Patty is coming to the land care meeting she has come with a dream. She's had a dream for many, many years. I met Patty when I first came on a year ago this January, but I've known her for other areas that we won't obviously go in tonight. But Patty has come through a volunteer to the stream team, working with Bill Seaman, our science advisor. She has also worked with the recruitment from our previous chair, Martha Campbell, to work with the children in the outdoors. This is Women's History Month, but I'm thinking of children right now. And I would like to introduce Patty Powell. And again, do we need to have any other introduction as a wonderful friend as well as a participant on many, many things.
Well, there's a story here.
So Grace has already told you my involvement with Land Care started because I answered a post in the Montreat Minute that said we needed volunteers to take water samples. And that's how my involvement began. And then assigned to children in the outdoors working on projects like our track trail. But I have had this idea for some time for an accessible trail in Montreat, and it really goes back a long time, 1959, when I started camp at Montreat Camp for Girls as a camper and spent every summer as a camper playing in the creek and enjoying the trails and just falling in love with it. So, and right now I live, by the way, in the house my dad built on Chapman Road. But anyway, the trail idea also includes a connection to my professional career as a kindergarten teacher. I taught special education and worked with lots of students and families whose children had not just mobility issues, but lots of challenges, both cognitive and sensory challenges. And I watched those families struggle to get their children outdoors. I also had the experience of working on summer staff for 4 summers, doing evening and weekend childcare and learning firsthand how hard it is just to push a stroller around Montreat with little ones. And really the idea, in fact, gelled last summer because I sat in Anderson Auditorium and heard Will Jones preach. And his sermon on July 25th was all about the fact that we should be paying more care and attention to folks with disabilities, living with disabilities in our midst. And so I got really motivated and I went to the committee. So this whole project really started with conversations. It's included conversations with the outdoor education department at Montreat College, with the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, with US Forest Service trail specialists, with members of the conference center staff, and just a whole host of other folks. But the most important conversation was with a gathering of individuals that we got together on Zoom, individuals who know Montreat really well and who either live with disabilities themselves or are raising children who have very specific challenges. And so that conversation really was focused on, is there a need for such a trail? And who would use it? And would it be important to our community here in Montreat? And the answer was a resounding yes. And there was so much enthusiasm. The group that was on Zoom for that conversation now forms the nucleus of our steering committee. And we're really poised to move forward. So we did some research and we especially relied on the United States Forest Service Trail Accessibility Guidelines and a publication, very comprehensive publication out of the state of Massachusetts that gives guidance on how to create these trails. And we learned that there were a lot of specific criteria that we should be thinking about, including parking, drop-off, access, grading, surfacing, slope, cross slope, habitat protection, future sustainability and maintenance, lots and lots of issues to consider. And with all that information in mind, we stumbled literally upon a site that seems very well suited to this particular project. And so it's described in your packet, and we have a photo that was recently taken from a drone to help you understand where this site is, because it happens to be on town land. And if you have packets, if you start on page 2, I'm going to help us get our bearings here so that you can tell where this recommended site is. It is just inside the gate. It is south of the Memorial Garden, also south of the pump house and the no parking area around the pump house. It's an existing gravel road and it's almost level and would lend itself very well to this particular kind of trail construction. This gravel road has been there for a long time. It used to be access to get over to the other side of the creek to the dump area. And you can see in the photo on page 2 at the top, there's a post with the red paint. That's where there's a wire barricade right now. And this gravel road includes on the left, as you're walking towards the creek, it includes 2 level areas that we can foresee making great use of. The first one would include some educational signage and interactive features, handicap accessible. And the second one would be perfectly situated for stone tables and benches. Because the whole idea of an accessible trail includes not just the individual with disabilities, but with their companions. And so both the width of the trail and the way that it's designed will appeal to families. It will appeal to individuals who are independent and able to maneuver the trail. So you can see that this gravel road ends right at the creek, and it's one of the rare and few places in our little valley where there's at least now shallow water and this level approach. Otherwise, there really isn't a space where you can wheel a wheelchair or a rollator or a stroller right up to the edge of the water. And the last page of pictures in the packet shows you, it helps you orient where the pump house is. So on this back side of the pump house gives us a great hillside for native plantings, and you can see how the road continues. And in the distance, in that right-hand margin of the photo, you can see the existing Memorial Garden Bridge. And our goal really throughout this imagining, to borrow Will Jones' word from his sermon, is that everybody ought to be able to get to the creek. And so we're hopeful that with your consent that we can move forward to file for the special use permit that'll be required and to start actually getting specifics on how we can move ahead to create Flat Creek Crossing. What we're describing in the packet and tonight is really what could be just phase one, because additional phases like connecting this trail with the existing narrow gravel path that goes up to the Charlie Caldwell commemorative stone, if y'all are familiar with where that is. So we could, without a lot of work, create a way to link this trail with that area, and with some pretty straightforward adaptations, fix the bridge so the bridge could be wheelchair accessible, and it would then allow access to the other side of the creek and to the existing native garden trail and Elizabeth's Path and so forth. So that's the idea. Now you've heard the story. We want to hear your questions.
Any questions of Patty or Grace? Kitty, you had one?
Yeah, I had some questions. I think, Patty, you might have already approached this when you talked about the grade. So it sounds like the grade is in good shape for a wheelchair.
We haven't paid yet for a professional survey for all of this until we get farther along. But individuals like our local landscape designer and another trail specialist have looked at it and said that it looks like it will fit nicely within that 5% grade requirement.
Okay. I wanted to also ask, maybe this is a Barry question, but it's on that property that's within the 100-foot radius of the pump house. And I know we're not supposed to pave over that. So how does that?
Yes,
Interact.
ma'am. I met with Mr. and Miss Nichols and Miss Powell earlier in the week and just expressed to them that we couldn't use anything oil or petroleum based. We couldn't asphalt a path. We cannot use anything to spray or control weeds. Has to be all manually pulled or manually taken care of. And the products that they talked about for using for the path falls within the criteria of not affecting our well in any way. And they're going to do minimal grading and scratching of the level areas, pretty much cleaning up a pretty rough spot where a lot of debris from the floods have deposited right there along that area. So it's a win-win. And it doesn't look to me, I reviewed the state book and it doesn't look like to me that it's going to violate any of that area.
Do we have to involve the Army Corps of Engineers since it goes down to the creek?
I don't believe so. I don't believe, as long as they're not disturbing the stream bed or the stream bank right there, I don't believe we're going to have to involve the Army Corps.
And who determines if it's not disturbing the creek bank?
That will probably fall on them and whoever they hired
Engineering firm. more than
Engineer.
one.
looking at it. Yes, ma'am.
Where would the parking be, Patty?
I'm sorry.
Parking for this?
Existing, one parking place, handicap with a hard surface apron around it, allowing access.
Where?
Right at the entrance to that gravel road. It's It's south of the pump house. It's a cut through that's existing right now. If
Just-
you drove down.
Just as you exit Assembly Drive, like you're going, turning into the columbarium.
Yeah.
That area right there is outside of our 100-foot. I marked it earlier in the week. I've got a blue marker and some bushes right on the edge of the trail. That falls outside of our 100-foot. So they can actually pave an apron and pave,
And park
you
there.
probably get 2 or 3 little parking
Okay.
areas right there to the right as you pull into the parking area.
And while Barry's still here, he was so nice to meet with us and talk about some other special things to think about with our design. And one of them including a lockable barrier across that existing gravel road, which would part of it be covered with our new surface, but to allow for emergencies if maintenance vehicles needed to use that access, if in fact the bridge for some reason was out of commission. So we thank Barry for.
Other
pointing all those
questions?
good things out.
Yes, and I think Patty may have just answered it, but let me direct it to Barry. I know you all use that pathway or that road at times. Would that make it unusable for you? And if yes, is it a problem?
We have tried to steer away from using that just because of, the creek.
Yeah.
In an emergency, how emergency situations are, they've talked about the path being narrow enough for us to straddle the trucks or maybe even put one tire on it. So we would still be able to gain access to over here to shop and stuff if we needed to in an emergency situation.
Good. Other questions?
We
Comments?
have to get a new parking place for Ben, the Terminex man. He parks there and that's where he
Yes,
has
ma'am.
lunch.
Well, we do have appropriate signs, and I have gifted with Patty being very embarrassed, but she said, please don't bring it, so I didn't, but I showed it to her. But we do have our first, you can get them at campgrounds, it is our first accessible trail, and it has a wheelchair, the usual handicap figure, and then a hiker next. This is a property that is going to be improved. It's going to be beautiful. And Barry wants to have something that, I think he goes down and we can still see a lot of the debris, but it is a road that still can have those wheels going down on the left side, and the trail is on the left side as you go in. Because, did you mention that? I think you didn't. Okay, because that is where anyone that needs to get out of a wheelchair will have rock benches. And there will not be anything down there that will be flying away in a flood. It is an extremely, floody place. But the cars have been down that road sometime, and I know that that's why we would put up a gate there, because some people go there and wash their cars, which is, of course, is not a good idea. But at any rate, we are wanting to get your thoughts and your feelings about our attending and getting, we already have the permit ready to be filled out. And we would like to be able to get to the Board of Adjustments soon. So if there are any concerns tonight that you might have, please express them. But Patty and I greatly appreciate the time. And again, Ben, thank you.
What's water like, Barry? Barry, you still around? What's water like when it gets high in that area? Okay, y'all got to keep that in mind.
Well, it won't wash away. The pavement is permeable. Is that what you're saying?
No, well,
Wash
you
away.
tell them the Calvin Trail was
Oh,
permanent.
I'm
too.
sorry. Okay, well, we'll put it back together.
Okay, I just want to caution you that we
No
have,
one's going to be down there if it
and we
does
will have more
disappear.
floods,
Now-
I'm afraid.
I have one question. When it's built and when it's established, who is going to be in there for maintenance? What land care will take over the maintenance?
I think just one other point, and it's in the packet, but we have already talked to Scott Adams, and this is zone conservancy, so recreational use is permitted.
And we are here because you own the land and we have to have your approval to use it.
Well, the item on the agenda is only for discussion. There's no act here for,
Do you want us to come back again?
well, I'm afraid you're gonna have to
That's fine.
get it for a resolution or something that
And
the
I have-
commissioners are gonna need to
That's
vote
great,
on.
Kim. That we would be happy to. if you would go to that last picture, it was one that we found, that Patty found, of the wheelchair at the beach. Everyone has a right to get to the beach. Everyone has a right not to listen to the creek, not to see Flat Creek, but able to roll in and put their feet in the creek.
Thank you,
That's the
ma'am.
creek that runs through us, you know.
Have one more idea. Would it be a good idea to get your engineer to look at it before we vote?
Well, we have some seed money that Will is getting all of our money. Will Jones, you know, he is the son of Walt and Sissy Jones of
Yeah.
the beautiful area of the sanctuary at the top of Graybeard. He's the minister that Patty heard on Sunday. I was not there, but I read it very quickly afterwards because she was ready to go with this. We've talked about it in other locations of an all persons trail. But if we don't want to spend money, if we don't think it's going to go, I don't know what an engineer would, I don't know how much it would cost. I know that a landscape designer costs $100 an hour.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible that we could just do a straw discussion to give them an idea of whether we're in favor of it? Or is
I think for us to give them permission to use the land, it's town land, we're gonna need to vote on it. I think there's gonna need to be a formal vote.
Well, I just meant for them then to get an idea that we're in favor of it or not.
Sure,
And if so,
Sure.
maybe they could get their engineer in the meantime
sure,
before we vote next month.
sure. Commissioners, you want to just give me a nod of the head if you're for it or?
Well,
One,
it's the kind of project you can't not get behind. But my major concern is we need as much information as we can, because it would be terrible to get into the middle of this and then just have it fall apart. So I just want as much information as you can get to us.
No, we're in the middle of a straw vote, please, ma'am.
But no, I'm forward with.
Yes, I would be in favor of at least proceeding with
I've got
investigating.
3
further.
votes on this and you two don't count, I guess.
I guess it doesn't matter that I'm for it.
Kitty.
I agree with Commissioner Alexander. You know, as I've seen so much flooding here in the past few years, I would just say I'd hate to see good money, no pun intended, washed away, but I love the idea.
Okay, you've got a straw vote. Everybody's in favor of it. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks for your presentation and thanks for your time and work. Next item on the agenda is consideration of a resolution of intent for a council form of government, council manager form of government. That would be changing from a mayor, town administrator form right now to a council manager form of government. Commissioners, we've talked about this a little bit before, moving forward to try to hire a new person to lead, Ben, we're happy with you right now, but we've got to come up with somebody permanent. So moving forward, what's your decision? What do you feel?
I have a question for Ben because he's been there, done this. Ben, that the attachment was very helpful in terms of giving an overview of the 2 approaches and the advantages of a manager council approach. One of the things that we have now with the mayor council is that the mayor has given all that administrative responsibility to the administrator. And so for all intents and purposes, the administrator reports to the mayor and not to us. In the new form, a manager council, the mayor is one of us, gets a vote, and does that leave the manager without a boss?
That's a very good question, Commissioner Whitmer. Actually, any town manager in North America, or at least the United States, will tell you, whatever the population of the municipality they represent is their boss. But to be more specific, the manager obviously answers to each council member or commissioner. And you answer to the majority. Sometimes you have to count, a manager only has to count to 3 or 4, whatever that majority is. But more specific is that the manager generally works for the entire council, but the spokesperson or the relay person has been in the past in practice the mayor. So there's not going to be a lot of difference that you would see between the town administrator, the town manager, or council manager versus the mayor council.
When I read the information in the packet, it seemed to me that we've sort of been almost functioning this way anyway.
We have.
You're correct.
He was
yes,
an
ma'am.
administrator, but he was pretty much working as a manager.
Right. But it clears up those lines when you go to the council manager, because theoretically, the administrator, even though they've been appointed to oversee many of the operations of the community, they're still kind of on that same level of all the other directors and department heads within the organization.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, in your agenda packet, and this was, that's been discussed previously by the commissioners. There is a resolution to set a public hearing for the change of the town of Montreat's charter. And you'll also see in the resolution that the staff would ask that the public hearing be set for April 14th at 7 p.m. Then a decision would be rendered at the following commissioners meeting in May, which is May the 12th.
Okay, commissioners. What do you want to do?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution of intent for council manager form of government as presented.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Whitmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Fouché. Discussion?
I have one more question. It says, and you alluded to it also, Ben, that the mayor has a vote now when we, because it says that the mayor or chairperson is a voting member.
Yes, ma'am. The mayor would have a vote in the event of breaking a tie.
Just as I do
Oh,
now.
Oh, okay,
Same
so you
thing.
wouldn't
Is that
have a
what that
vote
meant?
otherwise?
Yeah.
I didn't interpret it that way when I was reading
Yeah,
the
No,
material.
It would still remain. the
well,
same.
it says
You're
typically.
voting, right, as I understand.
Okay. So, all right. Yeah, I was thinking with 6, that's going to be possible ties. All right.
Anybody else? Question? Have a motion and a second on the floor. No more discussion, no more questions. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. Motion passes. So we will have a hearing on April 14th and then final vote on May the 12th. Okay, thank you. All right, item C is discussion of Texas Road Bridge improvements. Phase 1 and application for Phase 2 grant. Tom, you want to do that one?
Okay. In this year's CIP, which is the capital improvement plan, we budgeted $102,000 to complete Phase 1 of a 2-phase project for the bridge. Back in 2018, when the Bridge Committee was active, they looked at the project and decided that it would be best to break it into 2 phases. One, the structural phase, if you will, the engineering phase to get it up to where it needs to be. And then the second phase, which we might call an aesthetic phase, which the committee discussed many different possibilities, but one of them was a covered bridge. And I think that's what the majority of folks were leaning towards as of their last meeting. As I say, we have the funds this year to complete phase one, but not phase two. There is a possibility that we could get some funding for phase two. It is federal money that has been given to our local metropolitan planning organization that would allow us to apply for funding for phase two. We'd have to do it quickly because they just opened it up the middle of last month, and it closes the end of this month. We would submit to them our ideas, and then we'd have a couple of years, quite frankly, for fine tuning those plans and having our 20%. We would have to pitch in 20%. The MPO would pay for the other 80%. It's a fairly easy process. It's going to be a longer process if we get it to administrate it, because it does involve the Department of Transportation. The biggest wrinkle, friends, is that if we hear about it this year in 2022, funding will be available in 2027, 5 years from now. And that's a speedy process, I guess. Now, let me say this. If you agree that, yes, we should proceed, we could proceed on the application. But if the reconstituted bridge committee decides that they want to raise the funds instead, once plans are in order, that's possible. And we would simply turn down with the state or with the MPO the grant that they would give us. Am I missing anything, Ben?
The only stipulation I would add to Commissioner Whitmer's comments would be that the grant application requires a commitment by the Board of Commissioners for the 20% matching grants. And I spoke with Mr. Tristan Winkler, who oversees this project with the French Broad River MPO. And he said that in the lateness of the hour in relation to the application, we could send, if the council so desires, we could send an addendum to the application with the council's commitment.
And Ben, define commitment.
That's the monetary commitment to match the 20%.
Is that just a statement from the commission that we would commit to 20%
Yes, sir.
at that time in
And it would-
2027?
And it would be something similar to showing what's in the minutes where it has been approved on motion.
But we don't have to put the 20% in now
No,
into,
no, sir, not until it's awarded.
gotcha.
Would we be able to cancel that if we didn't proceed with the grant?
Absolutely, all the way up until the funding.
Other questions of Tom? Tom's done a lot of work on this. So serves on the MPO with Land of Sky, and he came back with this information and shared it with us. And any other questions of Tom? Comments?
So just so I can get it straight in my head, if we apply, which, funding's in 2027, we also obligated to a 20% if we receive the funding. But if we back out, again, not eligible or liable to pay that. And then I would go back to your comment for working with the Bridge Committee back in 2018. There was quite a bit of momentum. I know it's been 4 years, but there was quite a bit of momentum then from the community to participate and want to step in and help us complete this bridge and make it a beautiful, another beautiful site here within Montreat. So I'd like to think that that possibly could be rekindled quickly, similar to the fact that y'all got some good momentum with your creek project as well. So.
I'd just like to add, I concur with Kent. I think we can, that we certainly, we can rekindle a lot of interest in this project. And let me say, there may be a combination of these alternatives, taking advantage of the federal funds, but also Tom Friss had a great idea for a small pocket park on city land just to the right. We could be raising money locally for the pocket park while we're using the federal funds for the bridge covering. So there's a lot of synergy here, and I thank Tom for doing the spade work here, and we ought to take advantage of the opportunities, even if we don't ultimately avail ourselves of them, but the opportunities that are presented.
There's, within the provision of this available money, there's also a possibility of funding for a certain amount of wayfinding signage. It would have to be related to the bridge itself, but we could put up signs for to the trails, to Lake Susan, and that could be in the general area. So that would be over and above the actual costs of that we would request for that phase two.
Any other questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the commission then? Do we want to go ahead and do the application?
I would move that we submit an application as outlined by Tom and Ben, and scheduled for vote at our next meeting, a resolution committing to fund 20% of the total amount if in fact we do receive the grant from the federal government.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Blake to submit an application. That's due by March 31st. Any other? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Fouché. Further discussion and or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motions to submit an application signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. Thanks, Tom. Okay. Mason, I'll let you handle this item D, consideration of hunting dog ordinance, because I know you want to go ahead and make a motion about having a public hearing on that.
Yes, I'd like to move that we defer action tonight, but that we set a public hearing, at which time we bring in all the parties involved to discuss potential a revision to our existing ordinance, which is our dog control ordinance. Those revisions are simply two. One is to increase the existing penalty. The only penalty actually in the ordinance is sort of a non-functional penalty, because our police would have to take possession of the dog and then transport it, leaving no policeman in Montreat, to the Buncombe County Animal Control. We have no way of getting them there. We don't have cars that are able to transport them. It's sort of it's an illusionary remedy. There's a penalty that is applied in a sort of a general catch-all town penalty, but that's, I don't want to say illusionary, but it's not effective, at least in preventing the kinds of the bear hunting incidents we've got. The first offense is a warning. The second offense is a warning. The third offense is a warning. The fourth offense is a $250 fine. That's not going to stop anybody. They'll change dogs before they get to the fourth one. So it's to consider a more effective penalty in the dog control ordinance for people allowing dogs running at large. That they're in violation of our ordinance now. We just don't have a penalty to keep them from doing it. So change number one would be that. Change number two to the dog control ordinance would be to add a provision that almost every dog control or animal control ordinance we have just a dog control ordinance. Most municipalities have a broader animal control ordinance. They almost all include a fairly broad, frankly, public nuisance provision, which establishes it a public nuisance for a number of things, including typically the way they read, and I've read many of them, dogs repeatedly left at large. They don't really have one for sort of our problem, multiple dogs running at large. They also typically cover a lot more things, but including dangerous dogs, keeping dangerous dogs and so forth. So the two changes to our existing ordinance would be to add a public nuisance provision that would be narrowly tailored to what we're looking at. I'm not trying to pass a big change to the ordinance, but a public nuisance to make it clear that the kinds of activities we see and have heard about at our last meeting, those are a public nuisance. I don't know how you could characterize them any other way than as a public nuisance. They are an immediate danger to our citizens. And we need to call it what it is. It's a public nuisance. So those two changes to our existing ordinance. But again, I want those in a discussion with our residents, with the game folks, with the hunters. We don't want to penalize these folks. As I was talking to Kent, we want to give them the power to be able to tell their hunting friends that might come into Montreat, you better not do that because Montreat is ready for it. And that's the intent, not to trip them up either, not to accidentally penalize them when we don't intend to. But I think we can do that. But a public hearing or workshop sort of session is the way to do that and bring everybody into the process.
So Commissioner Blake, I hear you making a motion to defer, to set up a meeting involving all the parties to have a discussion about this
Yes,
before we move forward.
yes. And then, and once we get everybody's input on an ordinance and get something that we think is meets everybody's needs
Good.
and to reflect what Kent said, is narrowly tailored as possible so that we're not out making an ordinance just to make an ordinance. We're using a rifle, not a shotgun. And we're going to attack the problem we've got.
Okay.
Pardon the.
Have a motion. Do I have a second to defer?
I second.
I have a second from Commissioner Alexander. Any further discussion? Tom?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mason. You're suggesting in that public meeting or whatever we call it, that we would send specific invitations to like Captain Melton from North Carolina Wildlife
Correct.
Resources and Jim and in his crew as
Absolutely.
well for their
Absolutely.
input.
And the MRA, since they're a major landholder,
Sure.
I think we would
Yeah.
ask the MRA.
Absolutely.
And as well as publicize it for our residents.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Second question. One of the things that Captain Melton said, which I was surprised that he said, is that we could consider an ordinance that would selectively keep people out of Montreat, hunters out of Montreat. How could we do that, given the Constitution?
I don't think you can. I mean, I think you certainly can't, you can't facially do that. That's a sort of a legal term, but you can't say this club could come in, that club, and that's an equal protection clause sort of issue. But you can construct the law to apply to the activities specific activities that you're attempting to deter. And those aren't the activities that we've seen our friends at the Mount Mitchell Hunting Club do, which is when they do have a dog coming down here, making contact with our police department and not pursuing the dogs or letting them out again in town. And so the thought would be, there's a way to make what they do, I don't think is a public nuisance. What we saw happen several occasions at the beginning of this year were public nuisances. And I think it's how we define that action.
Gotcha. Thanks.
As I was reading through the recommendation for public nuisance, I also thought about for dog owners not hunting dogs, but there are situations that would address for our community too. So I think that might be a good thing.
Okay, we've got a motion to defer from Commissioner Blake, and a second from Commissioner Alexander. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion to defer, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mason, can you get together with Ben and come up with a list of invitees, and then we'll invite the public also?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mason. Appreciate all your work on this. Want to get it right at the start. Item E on the agenda is consideration of adding and removing signatures from the first bank checking account. This is where we've lost Alex and Ben's serving as why are we removing Darlene? What have you done, Darlene?
I can answer that.
Okay. 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 All right. Do I have a motion? This can't be that hard.
Mr. Mayor, I move to add interim town administrator Ben Blackburn and to remove Alex Carmichael and Darlene. Oh, that's wonderful.
Casquillo.
Thank you, Darlene. Casquillo from the first bank checking accounts.
Have a motion from Commissioner Otto. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Commissioner Blake. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item F was dropped from the agenda. And item G is to consider setting some fiscal year 2022, 2023 budget work sessions. You have some suggested dates or suggested time periods? Ben?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'll work at your pleasure.
When do you think we'll be ready, Darlene? Think you and Ben?
I would look at sometime mid-April. We're meeting with staff now, department heads, and getting their ideas and input.
Angela, will you shoot the commissioner some dates? And let us look at our calendars, mid-April. Okay. And we will set some dates for workshop. And then that workshop, we'll probably set dates for another workshop. I hope it doesn't take 3. Why are you, darling? You're not giving me confidence, darling. Public comment again? Anybody? Eric?
Please come forward. Here.
Oh. Well. Send the commissioner some information, please. Okay. Any other public comment? Any other comedians? All right. Commissioners' comments? Anybody have commissioners' comments tonight?
Yeah, just one. Nothing,
Okay, Kent.
if you didn't know, the bears are out. I've already seen a couple in my neck of the woods, in fact, in my yard, and I was very surprised, but end of February. So as we spend a lot of time already talking, now the bear hunters aren't out this time of year, but as far as the bears, they are out. So be mindful of that with your trash and your belongings and your little small animals.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody else? Your dates coming up to remember, special Board of Adjustment meeting is Wednesday, March 16th at 4 o'clock. Town Hall. You can also do it by, all these meetings you can do by Zoom. Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, Monday, March 21st, at 10 a.m. here at Town Hall. Tentative Board of Adjustment meeting, Thursday, March 24th, at 5 p.m. at Town Hall. Montreat Tree Board meeting, Tuesday, March the 29th at 9:30 a.m. in Town Hall. Montreat Land Care Committee, Wednesday, April the 6th at 9 a.m. in Town Hall. And Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, Thursday, April 14th at 10:30 a.m. here at Town Hall. And the Town Council meeting will be that same day, the 14th of April at 7 p.m. with the forum beginning at 6:30. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion from Commissioner Fouché. Have a second from Commissioner Otto. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.